For years, it felt like the kind of story people root for. Two former radio personalities trade studio lights for open skies. A Wyoming ranch becomes both their livelihood and their stage. Cameras capture the hard work, the long winters, the small victories, and the quiet family moments in between. Our Wyoming life wasn't just content, it was a shared journey. And that's why what happened next hit so many people unexpectedly. There was no sudden scandal, no explosive confession, just a gradual shift that longtime viewers couldn't ignore. The tone felt different, the dynamic changed, and eventually, the truth came out. In 2024, it became public that Mike and Erin were divorcing. A deeply personal turning point unfolding in front of a massive online audience. The heartbroken story of Our Wyoming Life isn't about drama. It's about what happens when a real marriage ends inside a very public brand, and how everything has to change after that. Before the heartbreak, there was a dream that felt almost cinematic. Mike and Erin didn't start as full-time ranch influencers. They came from radio, a world built on voice, connection, and storytelling. That background gave them an edge. When they began sharing their ranch life near Gillette, Wyoming, they knew how to explain things clearly and keep people listening. And people did listen. They filmed early mornings in brutal cold. They broke down ranch finances in plain language. They showed the wins and the setbacks without pretending everything was perfect. That honesty separated them from the polished versions of rural life people often see online. It wasn't just about cattle or equipment, it was about partnership. Viewers watched them make decisions together, solve problems together, raise kids together. The channel didn't feel like a production. It felt like a window into a real marriage navigating real responsibilities. Over time, that authenticity built. More than subscribers. It built loyalty. And loyalty is powerful. Because when an audience connects to a couple as a team, they don't just follow the work, they follow the relationship. That's what made Our Wyoming Life different. It wasn't only about ranching, it was about shared effort, shared stress, shared goals. Which is why, when that partnership eventually changed, it didn't just alter the channel. It changed the entire emotional foundation viewers had grown attached to. And that's where the story begins to shift. Success didn't happen overnight. As Our Wyoming Life gained traction, the channel slowly transformed from a side project into a full-time operation. What started as documenting ranch chores turned into managing upload schedules, partnerships, community expectations, and a growing online presence. And growth changes things. When thousands, eventually hundreds of thousands, of people are watching, every detail feels magnified. A missed upload sparks questions. A change in tone becomes a discussion thread. Even who appears on camera and how often starts to matter. But behind the scenes, ranch life was still demanding the same physical energy it always had. Cattle don't care about algorithms. Weather doesn't wait for sponsorship deadlines. Equipment still breaks at the worst times. Add in editing, planning, and managing a brand, and the pressure quietly multiplies. The channel's strength had always been transparency. They talked about finances, margins, and the realities of agriculture. That openness built trust, but it also meant viewers felt closely connected to the operation. So when subtle shifts began happening, people noticed. There was no dramatic announcement, no immediate explanation, just small changes that longtime viewers picked up on instinctively. And when audiences feel emotionally invested, they don't ignore those shifts. They start asking questions. At first, the speculation stayed light, but curiosity has a way of growing. Because when a brand is built on partnership, any change in that partnership becomes impossible to overlook. And soon, the whispers turned into something much bigger. The confirmation didn't come with chaos. In 2024, it became public that Mike and Erin were divorcing. The announcement was straightforward. No explosive details, no public blame, just the reality that their marriage was ending. For viewers, that moment reframed everything. All the subtle changes people thought they noticed suddenly made sense. The different tone, the evolving dynamic, the quiet shift in energy. What once felt like online speculation now had context. But what stood out most wasn't drama. It was restraint. There were no public accusations, no messy social media battles. The reasons for the split remained private, and both moved forward without turning it into spectacle. Still, the impact was undeniable. Because Our Wyoming Life wasn't just built on ranch work, it was built on partnership. The image of working side by side had become part of the brand itself. When that partnership changed, the foundation of the channel shifted with it. And here's the part many people underestimate. When your marriage and your business are intertwined, separating them isn't simple. It affects land, routines, branding, content direction, everything. The audience didn't just watch a couple divorce. They watched a brand restructure in real time. And while the ranch remained and the uploads continued, the emotional tone of the channel could never be exactly the same again because something fundamental had changed. And now, the question wasn't what happened, it was what happens next. After the divorce became public, many people expected everything to fall apart. That's usually how internet stories go. A couple splits, the channel collapses, the audience divides, and the brand slowly fades. But that didn't happen here. Aaron continued leading our Wyoming life. The ranch didn't shut down. The camera didn't stop rolling. Calving season still came. Projects still moved forward. Life on the Wyoming plains kept demanding attention, regardless of personal change. And that consistency surprised people. Because when viewers had mentally prepared for a dramatic ending, what they saw instead was continuation. At the same time, Mike moved forward separately, pursuing his own direction in projects outside the main channel. It wasn't framed as competition. It wasn't presented as a public feud. It was simply two people choosing different paths after building something together. That's a quieter story than most audiences expect. But quiet doesn't mean easy. Rebuilding a public identity after a separation is complicated. The tone shifts, the perspective changes. The dynamic that once felt familiar is replaced with something new. And viewers feel that difference instantly. Some embrace the evolution, others struggled with it. That's natural when a channel has been part of someone's routine for years. But the most important detail remained clear. The ranch endured. The brand adapted. And instead of collapsing under heartbreak, the story entered a new chapter. One shaped less by partnership and more by independence. And that chapter would redefine everything. What made this chapter feel so heavy wasn't scandal. It was attachment. For years, viewers had watched Mike and Aaron work side by side. The partnership felt steady, familiar, almost symbolic of what the channel represented. Teamwork under pressure, family navigating responsibility, building something together from the ground up. So when that foundation changed, it didn't just feel like news. It felt personal. Even though the divorce was handled privately and respectfully, the emotional shift was impossible to ignore. The on-screen dynamic that once carried the channel naturally evolved. Aaron's voice became more central. The perspective narrowed from we to I. And that subtle language change carried weight. Because audiences don't just follow content, they follow connection. Some longtime supporters rallied behind the transition, seeing strength in continuity. Others quietly drifted away, unable to separate the channel from the partnership that had originally drew them in. That's the hidden cost of building a brand around real life. When life changes, so does the brand. But here's what didn't change. The ranch still required work. The animals still needed care. The seasons didn't pause for heartbreak. And in many ways, that steady rhythm became the channel's anchor. Instead of leaning into drama, the focus returned to the land. And in doing so, the story slowly transformed from heartbreak into resilience. Time has a way of softening even the most public heartbreak. Months after the announcement, the dust began to settle. The speculation faded. The loud theories lost momentum. What remained was something far simpler, a ranch still operating and a creator still showing up. Aaron continued shaping our Wyoming life into a space that reflected her present reality. The tone felt steadier, more self-defined, less centered on what was lost and more focused on what still stood. And that shift mattered, because instead of turning the separation into ongoing drama, the content returned to its roots: cattle work, projects, everyday ranch decisions. The land became the constant again. Meanwhile, Mike continued on his own path, building independently outside the original structure. Two separate directions, no public warfare, no spectacle. That's not the ending many people expected. The internet often assumes that when a public couple separates, everything explodes. But this story unfolded differently. It was quieter, more restrained, more human. And maybe that's why it felt heavier, because there was no villain, no viral confrontation, just two people navigating change under a spotlight. The heartbroken part of this story isn't about scandal. It's about watching something familiar evolve into something new. The ranch remains. The brand continues. But the chapter that built it has closed, and what stands now is proof that not every ending is destruction. Sometimes it's transformation. Looking at it now, the story feels less explosive and more human. Our Wyoming life didn't end in flames. It didn't collapse under controversy. It simply changed shape. And that change forced viewers to confront something uncomfortable. When we follow creators for years, we start to see their lives like a series. We expect continuity, familiar dynamics, predictable energy, but real life doesn't stick to a script just because an audience is watching. Aaron's leadership of the channel today reflects that reality. The content feels more independent, the tone more focused, the rhythm more intentional. It's not the same dynamic that built the channel, and it's not trying to be. And that honesty may be the strongest part of this entire story. Because instead of pretending nothing happened, the evolution is visible. It's quieter, yes, but it's real. The heartbreak wasn't packaged into drama. It was absorbed into growth. The ranch still stands under the same wide Wyoming sky. The work continues. The seasons turn. But the narrative is different now. Not broken, just rewritten. And maybe that's the untold truth behind it all, Nice. Sometimes the most painful chapters don't destroy the story. They redefine it. In the end, the most surprising part of this story isn't the divorce. It's the dignity. There were no explosive live streams, no drawn-out public battles, no endless back and forth designed to fuel views. Just a quiet restructuring of a life that had once been shared so openly. And that restraint speaks volumes. Because when a marriage unfolds in front of an audience, the pressure to explain everything can be overwhelming. Yet much of what happened remained private. That is exactly where it belonged. The ranch didn't become a stage for drama. It stayed a workplace. That choice changed the tone of everything that followed. What once felt like a fairy tale partnership turned into something more grounded. A story about adaptation, independence, and continuing forward when the original blueprint no longer fits. And maybe that's why this chapter resonates so deeply. Not because it exploded, but because it endured.